Hi, Vince here with the tinkerersworkshop.com. I just got back from ArnFest 2018 just last week, and if you've seen any of Keith Rucker's videos, vintagemachinery.org, he talks a little bit about ArnFest in some of his videos. And what it is a gathering of like-minded men and women who are into collecting and restoring and preserving old woodworking machines and now even old metalworking machines. And it's an offshoot of the oldwoodworkingmachine.org site, OWWM. And once a year we get together, it's probably about 100, 120 of us that get together at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. And for 2 or 3 days we have demos on machinery restorations or different aspects of woodworking. And one of the highlights of the weekend for me is the swap meet. That's on Saturday morning. And I usually like to go bring some stuff to sell, and I always end up coming home with a truck full of stuff too. So this year I came home with a few things that I thought I would just kind of run through and share with you and kind of show you what I found. So before I get too far into this, I should probably explain that ArnFest, the word Arn is sort of a play on iron. So we call it ArnFest. Every year they do a t-shirt, and this is the one we got this year. This one's probably going to go down as a collector's item, because I don't know if you can see this, but they say 2018, an annual celebration of vintage machinery, and they misspelled annual, so it's going to be a rarity. Before I start talking about what I bought there, I thought I'd mention real quick, I always try to take some stuff that I have to sell, and usually it's things that I don't need. I had, probably about 3 dozen of these gear cutters that I had purchased in a lot, and they're way too big for my little Atlas milling machine. So I grabbed all of those that I had and threw them in a couple of boxes and took them along, just hoping I could sell 1 or 2 of them even. And Keith Rucker from vintagemachinery.org, he came along and saw them, and he looked at them and goes, well, how much you want for all of them? And so we struck up a pretty good deal that I thought was fair to both of us, and he bought them all, and that gave me plenty of money to spend on stuff that I wanted at the swap meet. And no sooner did I get home and found one that I had forgot to put in the box, so I still got one left, but I'll probably take that along next year. So before I get into the swap meet stuff, to show you real quick, there's always people that have some freebie things they're just giving away. Somebody had a whole box of jigsaw blades. I don't even know what size these are, but I just grabbed a few packs because, like I said, he had a whole box of them. Somebody was giving away pencils, 84 lumber. I always liked that logo. I thought it's kind of cool, just that 84 lumber logo. So carpenter's pencil, big fat round pencil. Grabbed one of each of those. Onto the swap meet stuff. First item that I bought, first purchase of the day. Went down to the end, and guy had this on a table. It's a offset tool base for a Delta lathe, and it's designed to allow you to work over, if you have a gap bed lathe, you can put this in your tool rest base, and then your rest goes here and you work over the gap. I don't have a gap bed lathe, but I do have an outboard turning stand for doing outboard turnings, and you can use these on those as well. One thing I'm a little cautious about using is you put this in your tool rest base, and you've got quite a bit of torque, cantilevered action here, weight hanging off the end. So I think I'm going to be a little bit careful using this, just so that I don't end up breaking the casting for the tool rest base. But that was a nice find. No sooner did I buy that tool rest, when I looked down at the other end of the table from the same seller, he had this nice little angle plate. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. So it's a nice little angle plate for a milling machine, and I picked it up and asked him how much he wanted for it, and he goes, "Oh, well, that goes with the tool rest base." And I kind of looked at him and he smiled. It was a joke, but he just threw it in for the cost of what I had paid for the tool rest base, so that was good. So several years ago, I had one of these Stanley 78 rabbet planes, and I used it a few times. Wasn't super impressed with it. Ended up selling it. It was a nice one. It was all complete. It was the Sweetheart era, and I decided I wasn't really going to use it, so I sold it. Then in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been reading a lot of other woodworkers that talk about how great these planes are and how much they use them, and I started thinking, well, maybe I was too quick to judge, so I thought if I ever came across one for a good price, I'd pick it up. Well, the prices seem to have gone up quite a bit from when I got rid of mine. So I saw this one at the swap meet there at ArnFest, and the guy was asking a fairly good price for it. I mean, a fairly high price, I should say. It wasn't overpriced, but it was top dollar, at least in my opinion. But it had everything with it. It has the depth stop. It has the fence. You can take that out. The blade is there, and it's fairly full length. It has the nicker here that you use to do cross grain cuts. So I went ahead and bought it at what he was asking for it. I thought it was okay price, just to get a complete one, not have to have it shipped and everything. So no sooner did I buy that than walk down two stalls down, or 2 cellars down, come across this one. Now this is a record 778 rabbet plane, and it's sort of a step up from the Stanley because the fence has double guide rods, which make it a little more stable. It has a nice little finer adjustment for the blade. I don't know, the Stanley has, you can see it here, it's just a lever, and the problem with that is when you're using it, your hand kind of can hit that lever and knock the blade out of adjustment. So this one's got more of a knurled thumb knob that increases the depth of cut of the blade. This one didn't look like it had ever been used even. The blade still has the original grind on it, and ironically it was about 2/3 the price of the Stanley. So ended up getting both of these. I'll probably try them both out. I'm guessing I'll probably keep the record and then wind up just motoring the Stanley, putting it up for sale. So I mentioned Keith Rucker was at ArnFest, and another YouTube celebrity that was there was Lyle Peterson, Mr. Pete, or Tubal King. He had a little bit of stuff that he was selling, and I picked up a couple items from him. Interestingly, he was not at the booth when I was buying it, but he put a plastic jar out and just said, "Put your money in the jar, I trust you." So I bought these 2 items from him. A set of joiner knives, just 6-inch joiner knives for my Atlas joiner, and a taper adapter, a Morse 2 to Morse 1 taper adapter. It's got a little bit of surface rust on it, but it should clean up nice. And I think it's a Cleveland, so good American brand. And it's kind of cool just to get something from Mr. Pete. This next item is not super exciting, but I'm showing it just because it's an example of one of the nice things about ArnFest is you can find parts and accessories for all kinds of vintage woodworking tools. This is a table saw extension wing from an old 1950s era Craftsman 8-inch bench saw or table saw. Sears must have made thousands of these things because I see them for sale all the time. But finding the extension wings isn't always that easy. So saw this one there, and I have a Craftsman 8-inch that I'm working on just as a little second backup saw. So I picked up this extension wing. It's kind of nice to buy this stuff in person because the shipping on something like this probably would have been more than I paid for the item. So always nice if you can just pick it up and carry it home. So in addition to woodworking equipment, there's a pretty good assortment of parts for metalworking equipment and some metalworking tools, lathes, shapers, things like that. This one seller had just a table full of miscellaneous parts that have been taken off different machines, and it's always a little bit of playing a game of picking up a part and trying to identify it and figuring out which tool it came from. So I found a few things that I recognized as parts off of tools that I have or that I like to try to find and restore. This first thing is a counter shaft that came off of a 6-inch Atlas Craftsman metal lathe, which I do have one of those, so I thought I'd pick that up as a spare, whether I just use the pulleys off of it or use the whole thing. Always nice to have. This second item is a tumbler from a quick change gearbox off of a South Bend lathe. When I saw it, I knew it was a South Bend, and the seller even told me, he said most of the parts he had were he purchased from a man that collected South Bend items, so he was guessing it was South Bend. I was hoping it was from a 9-inch lathe because that's what I have, and got it home, and it does match up with the one that I have on my lathe, so just kind of picked it up for a backup in case something ever happens. Sometimes these arms can get broken if the lathe happens to sustain some damage, if they fall over basically, and then a lot of times these get broken, so I just thought I'd have a backup. And then this third item, it's a clapper from a shaper, and because the guy had so much South Bend stuff, I thought perhaps it was from a South Bend shaper, so I went ahead and picked that up. I have an Atlas shaper, so I don't know that I'll be able to use this or not, but I don't know, it just seemed like a nice part, so I went ahead and grabbed it, got all three items together, just kind of spares to have. Of all the things that I got at ArnFest, I was probably happiest to get this next item. This is a Lufkin Master Planer Gauge, number 900, and this is a tool that it's used to set up the heights of cutters on metal shapers or metal planers or milling machines. It's something that I've kind of had my eye out for one for a while, and all the ones I see on eBay usually end up going for kind of more than I'm willing to pay, especially for a tool that I'd like to have. I don't know that I necessarily need it, but it's something that I just am curious to try out. So happened to see this one. My buddy Slav had this for sale. Slav is a great guy. He shows up every year at ArnFest with a ton of new old stock files and machinist tools. I think he buys out old hardware stores that are going out of business, and he's just got this huge inventory of new old stock files, and he always has some Starrett and Lufkin machinist tools as well. So he had this there, and has a little bit of surface rust on the top there, but I think it'll clean up nicely. It doesn't look like it's ever been used. The little extension's still in the rust preventive wrapper, so I was really excited to get that. I'm always amazed when people show up with new old stock items, and this is an example. I actually purchased this before the event from someone selling it on the owwm.org website and had it delivered. But it's a sanding plate for a Delta sanding attachment, lathe sanding attachment, which I have the attachment for my lathe. It bolts to the bed of the lathe, and then you screw this to the headstock, and so you can turn your lathe into a disc sander. This is a little later version. I have a sander with mine, a disc with mine, and it's just some kind of a zinc casting, a pot metal. This looks like it's more of a aluminum plate that's, you can see it's been balanced there. So I thought this might be a little flatter and truer. Even came with the sanding disc. Never been used. Still in the original Delta box, so kind of anxious to try that out to see if it's an improvement over the one that I already have. So the same seller that had the sanding disc also had a box of South Bend shaper parts that he had listed on the OWWM site before ArnFest. And I don't have a South Bend shaper, I've got an Atlas shaper, but I ended up buying these parts basically just for one item. But looking through it, there's a nice belt guard, there's another clapper for holding the tool, the ratchet feed mechanism. I think this is part of the oiling device. The South Bend shapers had a automatic oiling device to keep everything lubricated, like a pressure feed lube. This is a special wrench. I'm not sure. I think it's for some of the adjustments on the South Bend shaper. Don't know what this is, or if it's even a shaper part. It's got a casting number of 106-13. Really not sure what that goes to. I kind of don't think it goes to the shaper, but I could be wrong. Switch box that was special to the South Bend shaper. It's got a nice push button switch in it. Might be able to use that for something. And some other kind of belt cover, I guess, or pulley cover. Again, I don't think this actually came off of a South Bend shaper. Not sure what it's for. There's no markings on it. But the main reason I bought this whole lot of tooling is because he had one of these shaper tools, which this is really kind of hard to find. I see them every once in a while come up for sale. They usually go for a pretty good price. It's designed to hold a boring bar in the hole there, and it allows you to do internal keyways with the boring bar. Kind of hard to find as a shaper tool, so I ended up buying this whole lot just to basically just to get this item. Okay, I had to back the camera up for this one. This is a tool that I actually purchased on the OWWM.org site before the sale, before ArnFest. And one of the cool things about ArnFest is people are driving in from all over the country, mostly the Midwest, but there's people coming from as far away as California and East Coast. And you can often, if there's something you want to buy in another part of the country, you can often arrange, we call them ruckers, but basically you ask someone that's in the area of the tool that you're purchasing if they can deliver it to you, and give them a little money for gas and their time. But this is one that I purchased beforehand, and the seller actually in this case was coming to ArnFest already, but he brought it along with him, so I was able to pick it up there. We made the deal beforehand, and then I just picked it up there. This is essentially it's a horizontal bandsaw for cutting metal. I don't know why Craftsman calls it I think they call it a continuous blade hacksaw, but it really is just a bandsaw. It doesn't have a blade in it currently, but it lifts up like this, and it's got a hydraulic cylinder here that helps control the down feed so that it automatically lowers as it's cutting. I actually have one of these already, and the one I have is kind of rough. It's awaiting restoration. So I saw this one come up for sale on the OWWM site and thought, heck, that one's in really good shape. Maybe I'll just buy that and not have to worry about restoring it. Just the other one I have has a stand and a motor, so I'll probably put this one on the old stand and use the old motor, and then end up selling the other one I have. But I don't know, it's just kind of a nice, fine, nice, clean machine. Doesn't look like it's been used much, so that'd be kind of cool to get this up and running. In addition to the swap meet, on Saturday evening we always have a banquet, and at the banquet there's a live auction of items that people have donated, and the proceeds go towards the maintenance of the OWWM.org and the VintageMachinery.org websites. So they have a live auction of some of the bigger high-ticket items, but then there's also a silent auction where they have several things that people have donated, and you can put down a price you want to pay, and they call the auction at a certain point. Whoever has the highest bid gets it. I can't really spend with the big guys for the live auction things, but I did pick up a couple of items in the silent auction, and one of them was this nice steady rest. It's a South Bend steady rest for a 9-inch South Bend lathe, which I have a 9-inch lathe, so glad to get that. And then I also bought a set of bandsaw tires for a 12-inch bandsaw. I've got an Atlas 12-inch that I'm restoring. These bandsaw tires, nice quality made rubber tires, donated by Bobby Norick of Woodworkers Tool Works. If you've never checked that site out, they're great. They've got knives for planers and joiners, and tires for bandsaws, all kinds of cutting tools and blades. Really good resource to know about. I live about 300 miles away from Union, Illinois, where ArnFest is held, and one of the things I really enjoy about going to ArnFest is the drive out there. It's a good 5-hour drive for me, and I don't really like driving on the interstate just because of all the semis and traffic. So if it's a nice fall day, I will usually take a back road, an old highway or something. Usually take Highway 30. It goes through a lot of little towns, and it's just a more pleasant drive. And one of the things I try to do is stop at any garage sales or yard sales I'll come across along the way, or any antique stores or anything, and see if I can find anything there. And this year I found a few items doing that. First was I stopped at a old store. I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't an antique store. He had sort of a mishmash of new things and old things, and it was kind of in an old hardware store type building. But anyways, I went in and asked if he had any woodworking tools, and he showed me this box of new old stock Stanley plane irons for a 9.5 block plane. They're all made in USA. Has 4 irons in there. Some of them have a little surface rust on them, but that should clean up fine and be plenty usable. I do have 9.5 block planes, so nice to have a backup iron. Probably keep at least one of them, maybe trade the others for some other things that I need, but that was a good find. In the same town I found that, I stopped at an antique store, again asked if they had any woodworking tools. They didn't have much, but I did find this folding wood rule, also called a zigzag rule. I've never really cared a whole lot for this style of rule. I like the ones that fold out. And to be perfectly honest, a wood rule is more of a nostalgic tool for me. I use my metal rules more than anything. But I don't know. The one advantage of this, I guess, is it has this slide out leg, so you can kind of use these to take an inside measurement of a cabinet if you're measuring for a door or a drawer. It's nice to be able to do that and take an inside measurement on something. Otherwise, I don't use these too often. I have one already. It's in pretty rough shape, so I ended up buying this one just because it was in nicer condition. A lot of times the numbers get worn off and they're hard to see. This one's pretty clean. So I ended up picking this one up. It's a Craftsman, marked Craftsman. Not sure who made it for Craftsman. I would guess Lufkin, because they made a lot of these folding zigzag rules. But anyway, it's something to add to the collection. Same place where I bought the rule. I also found this expansive bit. This is for use with a brace. It comes with 2 cutters, and the idea is that you can adjust this cutter in and out for different diameter of holes. I have one of these already. The reason I picked this one up is because I noticed it was made by the Convalco company, which stands for Connecticut Valley Company. I think this Convalco, I think they were the original makers of Forstner bits, and real high quality tooling, good reputation. I've used some of their bits. They're excellent quality bits, so I saw this and wanted to get it just for that reason alone. Pick that up. On the way home, I stopped at an estate sale, and it was Sunday, so it was the second day of the sale. I think probably most of the stuff had probably been picked through the day before, but since it was Sunday, everything was half price. And I found a couple of little C-clamps. Let's see, this one's marked Made in USA. This one's marked Craftsman. They look like they might have been made at the same factory, but probably purchased at different times by the owner. But just a couple of little 2-inch C-clamps. I like these. They come in handy for clamping things to an angle plate, like that little angle plate I showed you earlier. Nice for small clamping jobs on the milling machine, or little things like that. So always good to have some of those around. Same place, same table, where they had this stuff set up was rather dimly lit, and I saw this block sitting there, and like I said, it's kind of dark. At first I thought maybe it was a sharpening stone, and then I looked at it and thought, oh, that's not, that's metal. I picked it up and it was real heavy, and I don't think, because of the weight, I thought, well, that can't be steel, but it's kind of dark to see. Well, I took it out and got it in the light, and I'm not sure if it's brass or copper, but it's one of those two. It was $1, and I thought, heck, that's got to be $1 worth of copper or brass right there, so I ended up buying that. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. Makes a nice weight. Maybe I'll end up using it someday for some kind of a machining project, but anyways, pick that one up. This last item I got is not a tool, but it is iron. So let's see if I can zoom out here a little bit. It is one of my other hobbies is collecting and restoring and cooking in vintage cast iron skillets and cookware. I've got most of the stuff I have is Griswold. I've got a Dutch oven and several Griswold skillets, but stopped at a yard sale, and guy had this number 12 skillet. It's pretty good size, and it's I don't know if you can see it, but it's Favorite Piqua, which was a brand that was manufactured, I think, in the 20s. I think they went out of business during the Depression, so from the teens and 20s up into the mid 30s. I don't have a skillet quite this big, so figured I'd pick that up, and I'll clean it up, season it. There's a whole process of doing that, but like I said, not a tool, but it is iron, and old iron, so it's appropriate. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. I enjoyed showing you stuff that I find, and if you're interested in ArnFest, go to the owwm.org site, and you can read a little bit more about it, and hopefully see you there some year. Thanks.